Hi everybody, it's Judy here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I pin down my vines, my long growing vines like this, down into the soil to help promote new growth. So someone commented and requested that I create a video just showing you guys in depth, step by step, what I do to pin my vines down into the soil, what that does, and so that's what this video is going to be about. Now the reason why I do this practice, like taking these vines that are hanging down the sides of the pot and then pinning them down to the soil, what that does is it encourages new growth to start growing from each of these nodes that are on that vine that hangs down. Those nodes will take root to the soil within the pot and in turn provide me a large, lush, full head up the top here. Once the surface of the soil is as covered with vines as much as I'd like, or those roots have taken hold and started to push out new growth, that gives me a large head of foliage. That's when I let it to start to grow and trail down the sides of the pot. That's what enables me to have huge, lush, vining plants, very much like this one, and I'll show you. Very much like this one. This is my mother plant. This is my golden pothos, my devil's ivy. And that's what I did with a lot of the vines. I pinned them to the soil and they just started to take off. If you look at the top of this plant, the surface of this plant, or like on top of the soil, you will hardly be able to see the surface of the soil because it's just covered in growth points. I don't know how many plants are in this pot. What I also did with this one was when I took cuttings from the vines, I would take those cuttings and just pop them back straight into the pot, and that made the head of it even more full and lush. That's how I get my plants really super full. So in today's video, that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to start with this Marble Queen pothos. Now the pins that I use, like, you don't necessarily have to use these pins. These are just black hair accessory pins. You could also use bobby pins. You could also use like chicken wire and then bend them to shape something like this, or shape like a bobby pin. You could use that too. I like to personally use these hairpins is because they're coated and they won't rust into the soil. I don't like rusty pins to be in contact with the stems of my plants. It could actually introduce actual rust. I don't know if that's what causes rust, what we call rust on plants, but it is a bacterial infection and I don't want to risk that by introducing actual things that rust into my soil or in contact with the stems or leaves. So that's why I like to use these pins that are coated, but that's just me. So I'm gonna bring you guys in a little bit closer and try and show you guys close up of how I pin the vines down onto the surface of the soil. So here we go. There isn't actually a whole lot more soil surface to pin vines down onto, but I'm going to try my best and pin this one vine down onto it. First thing you're gonna wanna do is just look at the surface of your plant, see where you'll be able to pin it down on. The easiest solution here is just maneuver it through all that foliage. I'm gonna press that down there. Here you can see one that I've already done previously. Sometimes you can take those pins out because the vine has already been trained to just sit there. Those pins are just there to like train the vine to sit down, and once it's like sat down and is trained to lie down on the soil, then you can take that pin out. But the pin's just kind of to keep it there from bouncing back up. So as you can see, I'm just pressing that down, making sure that any nodes that are there, like this one, for example, is coming in contact with the soil. So I'm just gonna take that pin that I took out just before and pin that one down. You'll also want to be a bit gentle with this because if you push down too hard, there's a chance that you might snap the stem. So just be a bit gentle with it and be very mindful of just how it feels. There is a bit of a bald spot in the soil there. So what I'm gonna do is take the rest of that vine and just pin that down into the soil. There's another pin there that I've done previously. I'm just gonna take that out and pin that down into there. So there we go. there's that last little bit there. I'm going to take that, twist it round into that remaining patch of soil there. Make sure that some of that soil is just like even covering the node. You can pin some soil on top of the node and get another pin and pin that one down. So this is definitely another method of propagation. It's a no-cut method of propagation, I like to call it. Oh, there's another vine coming up there. So I'm gonna pin that one down as well. There we go. It's a little bit tricky the first time you do it because you might feel like you're being really rough with the plant. You might even end up breaking a few leaves here and there, but that's okay. The plant will recover. There we go. Let's pin that one down. You guys can see this. Pin that one down. There we go. And there we have it. Those new vines at the top of it has made it a lot more lush and full, and once those nodes that are in contact with the soil start to sprout new growth, then those will start to sprout more growth at the top as well. So there's that one. I want to do the same with this Monstera Seltzer Picana as well. This is the one that I chopped and propped all those cuttings back into the top of the pot to get myself a large full head of plant like this. It's hard to believe that just a few months ago, it was only 2 stems growing in this pot. What I did was I chopped all those stems back, put those cuttings back into the top of this pot, and that's given me this after about 2 or 3 months. I've got one trailing vine here, and what I'm gonna do with that is I'm gonna twine that around the top of the pot as well and pin that down. So just gently looking at the top of the pot there is a lot of space on the outer edge of this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna twine that around the top of that pot, just kind of like circle it around the edges of the pot. Now I'm just going to pin those nodes down into the soil. So there we go, pin that one down. You don't need to put too many pins down, just put them down in places. Just pop them in places where the nodes are to keep them down in contact with the soil. It's gonna look quite messy for a while, but once it starts to come out full at the top, you won't even notice how messy it looks. It'll just look full and lush and vibrant and happy. Look at all that new growth there. That makes me so incredibly happy. Oh, it's so beautiful. There's so much new growth coming through there as well. This is a really fast grower, this Monstera Seltzer Picana. I love it so much. So that's it for this video. I hope it answered your question as to how I pin my vines down into the soil and why I pin my vines down into the soil. It's one of my most favorite ways to propagate plants without having to cut them. It's just as effective, I've found, as cutting them, propagating them, rooting them out in glasses of water. It just keeps it all within the one pot, you know what I mean? Eventually, this plant is going to be as nice and big and lush and full as my mother plant, my devil's ivy, and I'm very excited for that. So yeah, this is one way you guys can make the heads of your pots very, very full without having to cut your plant. So there you go. I hope this video was helpful and informational. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!